Welcome to the Deconstructionist Deep Dive, the podcast that doesn't just accept the story.
We break it.
We examine the pieces.
And expose machinery inside.
Let's dive in.
What if the secret to success isn't a mindset hack?
But a carefully designed trap to keep you from questioning the system.
That's the core question we're tackling today, isn't it?
It really is. That's the antagonistic thesis for this whole deep dive.
Yeah.
We're pushing back against this accepted story, this narrative about personal success. You see it everywhere.
Absolutely everywhere. Social media, bestseller lists, those corporate training things. It's unavoidable.
So our mission today, using the sources you sent over the articles, the studies, the analysis, is to really trace the, let's call it the ideological architecture of this modern self-help stuff.
Exactly. To deconstruct how it functions.
Yeah.
How it maybe functions as a tool for, well, social control, especially within our current economic reality. Late capitalism, as the academics call it.
And the big target, the thing that holds it all up, is this idea, this myth, really.
The meritocracy myth.
Precisely. The meritocracy myth. And we want to dissect how these huge systemic problems, economic, political, structural, get twisted.
Yeah, how they get shrunk down.
Shrunk down into these like manageable psychological issues, things that you, the individual, are supposed to solve.
Which conveniently lets the system itself completely off the hook, doesn't it?
Completely. So we're peeling back the inspirational fluff, looking at the actual wiring underneath.
Okay, let's start at the foundation. What are the core beliefs, the dogmas that you have to buy into for this whole self-help machine to even work?
Right.
Because if these foundational axioms crumble, the whole narrative just collapses.
Okay, so the first one, it feels almost ideologically violent in a way. We're calling it radical individual agency.
AXIOM1. And the claim is deceptively simple but totally pervasive. It's your success or your failure. It's all down to internal stuff.
So it's internal.
Purely. Your mindset, your habits. Did you do your morning routine? Are you disciplined enough? That's it. Nothing else matters.
So all the external things like where you grew up, the money your family had, systemic issues like racism in housing or schools, inherited wealth, your class.
All dismissed.
Not just minimized, right, but actively dismissed. They're called what? Excuses.
Excuses, or even worse, they're reframed as your limiting beliefs. It's your fault you even see them as barriers.
Okay, so that creates a huge blind spot, doesn't it? A sociological blind spot.
The critical weakness. This framework has to actively deny things we know are real. Verifiable systemic barriers, backed up by just decades of sociological data.
So if you're struggling, the message is always...
It must be your attitude. It has to be internal. Because the possibility that the system itself is rigged, it's philosophically forbidden within this doctrine.
But isn't that the sneaky power of the myth? You just need a few examples, right? Those highly visible people who did somehow beat the odds.
Outliers, yeah.
And their story gets used to make the whole thing feel possible, feel true for everyone else. It justifies the struggle.
That's the emotional hook. Absolutely. It's powerful. But, if we bring in even a basic structural analysis, like a Marxist lens, for instance, the whole axiom just dissolves. The data, frankly, is brutal. It's objective. Your class position, where you start, fundamentally shapes your life chances. Individual effort matters, sure, but it's often dwarfed by these structural factors.
You're talking about social mobility studies.
Exactly. We have loads of data showing how low social mobility actually is in many developed countries. Your mindset, statistically speaking, has far less impact than the zip code you were born in, or the wealth your parents had access to, or the schools you could go to.
So radical individual agency, it's kind of a fiction.
It's essentially a fiction designed to mask that structural reality. It's an ideological smokescreen, really. Keeps you focused inward, not outward.
Okay, moving to the next pillar, AXIOM2, the dichotomy of labor. This is where self-help seems to split work into two types.
Right. Two distinct categories, and they're framed morally and financially. You've got hard work on one side.
Which means...
Physical work, basically. Manual labor. The stuff that builds things, grows food, takes care of people, keeps the lights on. Essential stuff.
But how is it framed in this doctrine?
As inferior, ineffective.
Yeah.
Something you need to desperately hustle to escape. It's seen as, well, low value.
On the other side.
Smart work.
Yeah.
That's the glorified one. Levering capital, doing high ROI tasks, designing complex systems, delegating everything else.
That's positioned as the intelligent path, the only path to real wealth.
And the only path worthy of someone with the right mindset. It's sanctified.
Okay, but the deception here, what is it?
It's a brilliant deception because it sets up this false choice, this binary, and it completely ignores the, frankly, exploitation built into the very act of delegation.
How so?
To do that smart work, to strategize, to focus on high-return stuff, you need to be able to buy the time and the labor of people doing the hard, low-return tasks.
You need capital to even start playing the smart work game.
Precisely. It's a class sorting mechanism disguised as productivity advice.
One of the sources had this image. The roofer cannot delegate his heat exposure. That really stuck with me.
It's a powerful image, isn't it? The physical toll of manual labor, the heat, the strain, the exhaustion, those are costs. The smart worker effectively transfers onto the hard worker.
So if we bring in a counter idea, like the labor theory of value,
then the whole moral justification just collapses.
Yeah.
The labor theory, which is pre-foundational in economics, argues that all value ultimately comes from labor, whether it's mental strategy or physical effort.
But self-help splits them.
It creates this hierarchy to morally justify huge income gaps. It declares the physical work that underpins everything as inherently less valuable, maybe just because the people benefiting from the system don't want to do it themselves.
Which leads us to maybe the most cynical one, AKOM3, the alchemy of trauma.
Ah, yes, the great rebranding of suffering.
So personal tragedy, things like generational trauma or just the grinding reality of poverty, things we normally see as social problems needing fixing.
Right, things we should collectively work to eradicate.
If to get repackaged.
Repackaged and sold back to you as necessary ingredients, valuable drivers for your future success.
The struggle wasn't actually bad, it was building your character. The poverty wasn't systemic, it was just fuel for your ambition.
Exactly. It's this kind of intellectual alchemy. The goal isn't to heal the trauma or fix the system. It's to use the trauma to validate the hierarchy.
Yeah.
It pathologizes the struggle itself.
And it relies heavily on survivorship bias, right?
Totally. We only hear from the tiny fraction who supposedly hustled out of poverty or turned pain into power.
And their exceptional story becomes the rule.
It's used as proof that the system works. The very system, low wages, no safety net, instability that keeps the vast majority stuck or suffering. That 1 in a million success story is used to justify the fairness of it all.
Who benefits from this particular alchemy?
It's interesting because this one benefits more than just capital. It benefits all hierarchies. By turning victims of trauma or systemic issues into advocates. People who say, well, my suffering made me who I am. It was necessary for my success. Therefore, the system must be fundamentally just.
It neutralizes dissent.
Completely neutralizes it. How can you launch a critique of the structure if you genuinely believe your own pain was a required input for your personal win? You end up becoming a grateful victim, in a way.
Oh.
Okay, so once you accept those axioms, success is internal, hard work is bad, then the system can give you the how-to, the practical commands.
This is the liturgy, the daily practice of the self-help faith.
And this is where the unstated requirement, the class privilege needed to actually do these things, becomes really obvious.
So the first big conclusion that flows from the axioms, conclusion 1, psychological reductionism. It's packaged really neatly as the limiting story.
Right, the main obstacle holding you back. According to this, it's never the predatory loan market or mass layoffs or wages that haven't kept up with inflation for decades.
No, it's always internal.
Always. It's declared to be your individual internal self-narrative, some kind of deep-seated belief that's sabotaging you, your limiting story.
That sounds like the fundamental attribution error, but applied to whole groups of people.
Exactly. The FAE, for listeners, is that tendency we have to blame others' failures on their character. They're lazy. But our own failures on circumstances, the market was tough.
And self-help tells us to apply that FAE thinking to ourselves and everyone else struggling.
Yes. If you fail, it's always presented as an internal psychological flaw. You didn't believe enough, your story wasn't compelling enough.
It's a deflection tactic, isn't it?
A powerful mechanism of deflection. It shifts the focus away from, say, economic policy or corporate behavior and puts the blame and the potential for profit through courses and coaching squarely onto individual psychology.
But if we compare that to, actual sociology, this idea that you can just write a new story seems flimsy.
It's deeply flawed. Your story, your narrative about yourself and the world, isn't just made up in your head. It's shaped massively by social structures.
Like your family's financial situation, the schools you went to, the cultural context.
All of it. Your beliefs don't float free. They're grounded in your material reality. Can someone who got a full ride scholarship just decide to adopt this story of someone working 3 jobs to pay for night school? The material facts shape the narrative possibilities available to you.
Okay, so let's get practical. The implementation, the actual rules of the game, according to this system, we're calling it command sede, optimization for capital accumulation.
Rule 1, the big mantra: delegate, automate, eliminate.
Right, you hear this everywhere. Systematically get rid of all the low ROI tasks in your life. Focus only on high leverage stuff.
But here's the kicker, the unstated truth. The glaring class marker.
What's that?
This command demands disposable capital. To actually delegate a low ROI task, cleaning your house, childcare, cooking, admin work, you have to buy someone else's labor.
You buying back your own time.
Or paying someone else, usually less, to do the task. You're externalizing that cost onto another person.
So this is basically impossible for someone struggling financially.
It's the clearest sign of class privilege baked into the whole self-help structure. If you're barely making rent, you can't afford to hire someone to do your laundry or manage your schedule. This command is utterly inaccessible to the precariat.
Can you define precariat quickly?
Sure. It refers to people in precarious employment, temporary, contract, unstable work. Often, they're the very people doing those low ROI tasks that these smart workers are delegating.
So the advice isn't really work smarter, it's more like...
Functionally, it's have enough money to buy the labor of the working class, then use your freed-up time more profitably. The system sorts people into delegators and the delegated, and self-help gives the delegators the moral justification.
So if I am the cleaner, the driver, the data entry person, am I just stuck by definition in this framework?
Pretty much. It tells you to optimize, but if you don't have the capital to optimize through delegation, you're trapped doing the low ROI work that the doctrine itself is already labeled as inferior.
Okay, what's command 2? Hyperspecialization.
This one says, focus only on your innate strengths. Ignore your weaknesses completely. Become the absolute best at one very specific, highly profitable niche.
What's the danger there? Sounds kind of efficient.
The danger is creating systemic dependency. If you only develop one narrow skill and ignore everything else, you become completely reliant on the corporation or the market structure around you to handle all the other parts of life or business.
It discourages well-roundedness.
It actively discourages holistic competence, self-reliance. It mirrors corporate HR wanting perfectly shaped pegs for specific holes rather than adaptable, capable individuals. You're trained to be an irreplaceable cog, but you're still just a cog.
And the last one under optimization. Command 4, perpetual self-audit.
Yeah, the sources mention this constant need for like quarterly or even weekly reviews of your habits.
But tied specifically to what?
Tied strictly to profit-driven goals and metrics. Are your habits increasing your bottom line?
This feels like internalizing the boss.
It's exactly that. It creates a kind of panopticon-like self-surveillance. You know, the panopticon, Bentham's prison design.
Where the guard might be watching so prisoners always behave.
Precisely. Except here, you become your own hypercritical supervisor. You internalize the gaze of capital. You're constantly measuring your own worth, your sleep, your diet, your meditation by its contribution to your productivity and profit.
You're never off the clock.
Never. The guard tower is in your phone, it's in your head, and you're reporting back to yourself on behalf of the market. You're judging the value of your soul by its ROI.
Which brings us to command set B, epistemological control. Controlling what you even allow yourself to know.
Right. How you manage information and belief. Command 3. Protect confidence.
This is the avoid negative news thing.
Often, yeah. Curate your inputs. Avoid toxic people. Avoid news that might challenge your optimism or your story. The goal is to keep your fragile sense of self, your confidence, intact at all costs.
But that sounds like choosing ignorance.
It's willful ignorance dressed up as self-care. By actively avoiding disruptive information news about inequality, climate change, political issues, systemic problems, you protect your personal bubble.
But you also cut yourself off from understanding the real forces shaping your life.
Exactly. You insulate yourself from the very information that might reveal the structural reasons why you feel the need for self-help in the first place. You choose comfort, the comfortable lie, over the potentially uncomfortable truth.
And that links to the next point, bafflement 2, reality as perception.
This is a big one. It's this radical philosophical claim you hear from some gurus that your material reality, being broke, being hungry, being in debt, isn't really real. It's just a matter of perception.
Or frequency or bad vibes?
Yeah, all that. It's a way to dismiss any critique based on material hardship. If someone points out poverty, the answer isn't policy change. It's change your perception, raise your vibration.
It implies that if you just stop seeing the scarcity, it disappears.
That's the implication, which is frankly philosophically illiterate. They might vaguely gesture towards complex ideas like postmodernism, but they misuse it to deny basic material reality.
We need to counter that with
Basic scientific materialism.
Yeah.
The simple, established fact that the material world, hunger, poverty, wealth, debt, exists independently of how we feel about it or perceive it. Your mindset alone doesn't magic away structural debt or unaffordable housing. These are material facts.
And perspective is shaped by that material reality.
Absolutely. The person juggling 3 jobs to pay rent fundamentally cannot share the same perception of the economy as someone who inherited wealth. Their material experience creates their perspective, their vantage point. It's not just a choice of attitude. Okay, so to really get this, we need to see that these aren't new tricks. These control mechanisms, these ways of thinking, they're old, really old.
Just repackaged.
Secularized, rebranded for the modern market, wrapped up in the language of entrepreneurship and freedom. This is the genealogy of control.
The sociologist Max Weber famously traced this back.
Back to a secularized version of the Protestant work ethic. That's where the kind of spiritual DNA of this whole self-help belief system comes from.
You have to understand Calvinist predestination first.
Right.
Explain that connection.
Right. So in Calvinism, people believed they were predestined by God for heaven or hell. Big problem. They couldn't know for sure which group they were in. Created huge anxiety.
So they look for signs.
Desperately. Signs of God's favor. Signs they were among the elect. And since the Bible wasn't explicit, they started interpreting worldly success, working hard, being frugal, saving, reinvesting as a potential sign. Success became a proxy for divine favor.
And the modern link is?
It's almost a one-to-one parallel.
Yeah.
Success today signals you have the right mindset, the modern version of God's favor. Failure, on the other hand, signals you have a moral flaw, a spiritual defect, a limiting story, not enough discipline.
So wealth means you're chosen by the market. Poverty means you're damned.
It's a direct inheritance. The market's judgment replaces God's judgment. Your net worth becomes this visible, measurable sign of your internal righteousness, your readiness for success.
And how is this structure maintained? Through specific manipulations.
Absolutely. Through emotional and spiritual manipulation. This is the sermonizing part of the self-help movement.
Like using fear.
Letter number 1, fear of mortality. Weaponizing that anxiety about future regret. You know the image lying on your deathbed full of regrets.
You hear that all the time.
It's used to push you into compliant action now.
Yeah.
Buy the course, start the hustle, follow the guru's commands. The fear of future failure stops you from pausing and asking if this path is even what you actually want.
And the second lever?
Aspirational identification. Using those carefully selected success stories, the big names, the gurus, as proof the whole system works for everyone.
If they can do it, so can I effect.
Exactly. Despite the massive, overwhelming selection bias, for every one success story they promote, there are thousands, maybe millions, who followed the same advice and got nowhere. Their stories, conveniently ignored, suppressed.
Which leads to the spiritual danger zone. Bafflement 1, spiritual bypassing.
Encapsulated in that phrase you sometimes hear, align your soul with your profits.
What's so dangerous about that? Sounds integrated.
It functions as the ultimate ethical get-out-of-jail-free card. It suggests there's no fundamental conflict between maximizing profit, which, let's be honest, often involves exploitation, cutting corners, intense competition, and being a good, spiritual, ethical person.
It papers over the cracks.
It deliberately obscures the real, inherent conflicts between genuinely ethical behavior and the relentless profit motive that drives capitalism. For instance, can a company truly prioritize worker well-being or the environment if its sole legal mandate is maximizing shareholder value? This phrase lets you pretend that conflict doesn't exist.
Okay, so if this is the new secular religion, how does it stack up against older wisdom traditions? Do they resist this?
Oh, absolutely. It's fascinating how actual established philosophies immediately expose the flaws in this modern doctrine.
Like Stoicism, how does that clash?
Stoicism directly critiques, axiom, radical agency. The absolute core of Stoicism is the dichotomy of control. Focus only on what's truly yours, your judgments, your responses, your actions.
And everything.
Everything external, your health, wealth, reputation, market conditions, you have to acknowledge as fundamentally outside your complete control, subject to fate, or circumstance.
Whereas self-help says you control it all with mindset.
Exactly. Stoicism advises against basing your self-worth or happiness on external outcomes like wealth, which is precisely what this brand of self-help demands you do. It counsels humility about the external world.
What about Buddhism?
Buddhism offers a powerful critique of conclusion one, the limiting story. In Buddhism, suffering, dukkha, doesn't come from having the wrong internal narrative.
Where does it come from?
It arises from attachment, from craving, from clinging to desired outcomes, and the illusion that things are permanent. The answer isn't to rewrite your story to want success more effectively. It's to understand impermanence and lessen your attachment to those profit-driven goals altogether.
Different diagnosis, different cure.
Completely.
Yeah.
And one more, let's bring in feminist standpoint theory. How does that challenge things?
How does it critique bafflement to reality as perception?
Standpoint theory argues that your material embodied experience, especially if you're part of an oppressed group or on the margins of power, actually gives you a more objective, clearer view of how power structures really work.
Because you're forced to see the reality.
Precisely because you can't afford not to see the material reality. The person struggling with low wages and inadequate childcare has a much clearer, more objective understanding of economic inequality than the guru preaching that wealth is just a vibration.
So lived experience from the bottom up gives a truer picture.
It argues that physical and economic location fundamentally shapes your perspective and your ability to see the system objectively. It's a direct antidote to the solipsism of reality is just perception. Your location matters. All right, let's shift gears slightly. From analysis to inventory, we need to be surgical here. List the core deceptions and ask the crucial question for each one. Who benefits?
Because the function of an idea often reveals who profits from it being spread.
Exactly. Let's start with the big one. The bootstraps lie. The idea that success is all self-made, just pure individual grit.
Okay, function.
Its main function, to create a self-blaming underclass. If you believe it's all down to you, then your failure is your fault. All that anger, frustration, energy gets directed inward. I need to fix my habits, my story.
Which prevents people from looking outward at the system.
Precisely. It stabilizes the broader economic system against critique or unrest. The historical parallel we mentioned, Puritan predestination wealth is a sign of God's favor. Poverty is a sign of damnation.
And the power beneficiary.
Clearly capital. It keeps the focus on individual striving and away from systemic inequality or the distribution of wealth.
Okay, deception number 2. The pain to power alchemy. Turning trauma into fuel.
Function. Convert victims of hardship into advocates for the very system that might have caused or perpetuated their hardship.
We linked this historically to
Christian theodicy. The attempt to justify why suffering exists in a world supposedly run by a good God, arguing it must be part of some larger, necessary divine plan.
And the beneficiary here.
This one's broad. All hierarchies. It neutralizes dissent from below by convincing people their suffering was ultimately good for them. Therefore, the structure causing the suffering, whether it's a corporation, the state, the economy, must be fundamentally okay, even justified.
Deception 3. The ROI justification. Glorifying smart work over hard work.
Function. To provide a moral justification for exploiting labor. It rationalizes massive income inequality. By arguing the smart worker leveraging capital is just inherently superior, more effective, and thus deserves vastly more reward than the person doing the physical work. The historical parallel. Think divine right of kings. Some people are just naturally ordained to rule and reap the benefits.
Beneficiary.
The managerial and capitalist class. It provides the ethical framework needed to pay low wages for essential manual labor while justifying enormous profits derived from capital, strategy, and delegation.
And the last one on our inventory, the soul profit alignment.
Function. Spiritual absolution. It gives people permission to pursue profit aggressively, even ruthlessly, without feeling ethically compromised.
How does it do that?
By suggesting that as long as your soul or mission feels aligned, the actual impact of your profit-seeking actions doesn't matter as much. We compare this to Catholic indulgences, essentially paying, or in this case, believing your way into forgiveness for the sins committed in the pursuit of wealth.
Beneficiary.
Again, primarily capital. It neutralizes ethical concerns about business practices by turning spirituality itself into another tool for optimizing profit. It ensures profit remains the ultimate, largely unquestioned measure of value.
Okay, we've taken it apart, looked at the pieces, the history, who benefits. Now let's put it back together. What's the big picture? The central, maybe devastating paradox here.
The ultimate deception, the core lie that holds the entire edifice together, needs hammering home. It's the insistence that the economic system is fundamentally fair, fundamentally meritocratic.
And therefore,
Therefore, your place within that system, your income, your status, your debt level, is a direct, accurate reflection of your internal qualities. Your mindset, your habits, your story, your net worth equals your inner worth.
and the effect of believing that lie, what does it do?
Its critical effect is immediate and total. It individualizes and psychologizes systemic inequality. Poverty stops being seen as a result of policy choices, corporate power, or historical injustice.
And
It becomes a personal failure. A failure of mindset, a lack of grit, a limiting belief. Lack of opportunity isn't a structural problem. It's just your failure to create opportunity through sheer willpower.
So all the focus for change shifts onto the individual.
Completely. You are the only site where intervention is needed. Fix your story, optimize your habits, manage your emotions better by directing all energy, resources, and self-critique inward.
The system itself gets a free pass.
It's completely absolved. Why demand systemic reforms like better wages, affordable health care, or stronger regulations when the problem is just that individuals aren't thinking positively enough or haven't bought the right coaching program?
Which leads us to the final paradox, the punchline.
The brutal punchline. This entire genre, self-help, sells itself on the promise of individual liberation, freedom, financial freedom, freedom from the 9-to-5, freedom from worry.
But its actual function.
Its actual function is as a highly sophisticated, incredibly effective system of social control.
How? Explain that twist.
It teaches you to master yourself, your thoughts, feelings, habits, not for your own authentic liberation, but so you can be better mastered by the demands of the current economic system.
So your liberation is redefined.
It's redefined as simply becoming a more efficient, more productive, less complaining component within that system. Your mastery of self just makes you better at enduring and excelling at your own exploitation.
You're not escaping the system.
You're just learning to cope better within it, to manage your internal state, to accommodate often unreasonable or unsustainable external demands, all while blaming yourself if you struggle.
So you're not getting out of the rat race.
You're just learning to run faster on the wheel, maybe even feeling smug about it, while simultaneously judging the other rats for not having the right mindset.
Yeah.
And in doing so, you implicitly uphold the legitimacy of the race itself.
A brutal conclusion, as you said, but logically follows from dissecting the system's own internal logic.
It seems inescapable when you follow the arguments laid out in the source material we analyzed.
And that's our deep dive for this week.
Remember, the most dangerous illusion is the one you don't know you're in.
But now you know. So here's our question for you. Where have you seen this limiting story, deception, show up in your own life this week? And what's one small rebellious act you can commit to that writes a new, truthful chapter?
Let us know in the comments. Question the narrative. Deconstruct the dogma. See the system.
We'll see you next time. Stay skeptical.